Hi guys, it's Shanae and welcome back to my channel. Also, if you're new here, I post new videos every week, and today's video is actually going to be a stick to the script on the book Like Falling Stars, which was written by Avalon Roselin and illustrated by R. Hamlin. Avalon Roselin and R. Hamlin also have an amazing book and movie review channel that's a bit different, and it's called Roselin Productions. So I'll be leaving the link to that here and in the description box below as well. So for those of you who are new here, I just want to give you a rundown on what Stick to the Script is all about. And it's basically where I take a book, movie, TV series, or anything else really, and explain how I think it could hopefully successfully be adapted into another medium. So this video will be divided into two sections. So there will be the spoiler-free book review and then the slightly spoilery stick to the script. But I am going to try and steer clear of spoilers as much as possible because I do really want you to check out this book. I do think it's amazing, and I also just want to make it clear there is no affiliation, there's no collaboration, this is all just my own initiative, but I will be leaving a link to the book in the description box below. In summary, the story is about an amnesiac woman called Anne who, in her search for her memories, comes across an isolated frost fairy called Nicholas. As they live together, they learn more about each other and about themselves, and their priorities start to shift as their friendship grows. This is such a beautiful and wholesome story. It's the kind of light novel that you can easily read to your children while also still enjoying it yourself as an adult. It's very clear from the beginning that this story is meant to have a fairy tale feel to it, and I do think it does it very successfully. The friendship in this is so nice to see because it is actually a healthy relationship, which is something that I think a lot of books miss out on these days. And then the other thing that was really nice for me was the fact that it is indeed plot driven but not drama driven. And by that I don't mean that there aren't emotional moments and moments that had me crying, but that there aren't any moments of drama that ends up being inconsequential or petty, I almost want to say. So yeah, that for me was a huge plus to this book. So moving on to how I think it could be adapted, I first want to address the format and the style of this hypothetical adaptation. So first things first is the fact that this is a 247-page book, and with the way it's structured, I think it is pretty ideal for a movie without the need for too many things to be removed. If changes are indeed to be made, I think it would simply be that certain scenes would be combined or compressed, and if that doesn't work, there are certain scenes within the books that I can easily imagine as being montages. That being said, I don't think this should be a live action movie. I frankly don't think a live action movie would do it justice, and I fear that if it were to be a live action, the fantastical feel and lightheartedness of the book might be compromised. So the book has a handful of sketches in it that's illustrated by R. Hamlin, and the roundness in those drawings reminds me of the roundness that you see in the way that Chris Sanders drew Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon. So with that in mind, I do think an animation, whether it's 3D or 2D, would be the best format for the movie, and I do think that preserving R. Hamlin's drawing style would be best. That being said, I do think the coloring for this should have a more Frozen-esque tone, as the primary colors in the book seem to be white, blue, black and pink, with the occasional orange when it comes to Jack and Julius. I think the drawings work really well with the fairy tale quality of the story, and with that I can easily imagine them adding in a narrator, if not going full force with the storybook retelling. There are some dark moments in the novel, but none that I truly feel would be that bad once translated into a movie. Much like other dark moments in Disney films, they do tend to fly over children's heads, so I don't think it would be too much of a problem. Okay, then we move on to actual events in the book, and I can understand how this might be seen as slightly more spoilery, but because of when they take place in the book and the vagueness that I will be referring to events that take place later in the book, I don't think it will ruin the reader's experience. Okay, so the first chapter starts with Nicholas at the equinox party, where all the fairies of all the seasons gather together to celebrate the transition from summer into autumn. There is a spat between Nicholas, who is the Prince of Winter, and Julius, who is the Prince of Autumn, and Nicholas oversteps his boundaries, which causes Drew, the Prince of Spring, to have to report him to the Queen and King of the Fairies. I could imagine this entire exchange happening in a similar way to the introduction of Beauty and the Beast, though having it perhaps rather play out in a way that works with Nicholas's ice powers or with Nicholas's love for painting. But as with the Beauty and the Beast's introduction, the equinox is something that I think should be slightly condensed in the movie version. The book starts with Once Upon a Time, which is an immediate nod to classical fairy tales. So I do think if you were to cleverly incorporate nods towards classic Disney films or so on, then it would be in keeping with the author's nods towards classical fairy tales. Then, once the introductions are finished, we are introduced to Anne waking up in the woods without her memories. There's also a party in this book, and the prep for this party is an example of something that I think could be easily turned into a montage, like the montage they did in Anastasia when Dmitri and Vlad taught Anastasia about the history of the Romanovs. Then skip to this timestamp if you don't want an actual genuine spoiler, but I just felt like I needed to mention this. So during the party preparations, Anne forces Nicholas to take a quick break, and during that break he decides to use the warm colors that Anne gave him and mix that with his usual preference for cool colors, and he basically ends up painting the picture on the cover of the book. I know this might not seem like an important scene, but for me it so beautifully captured what I thought was a representation of the balance that Anne had managed to bring into Nicholas's life. Anyway, I just think this book really lends itself to being adapted, and the way that the friendships are portrayed and the way that they take some typical tropes and manage to turn them on their heads, I think brings something really refreshing into the mix, and that's why I think it would be a good addition to the animation world if this was indeed to be turned into a movie. Something that I also forgot to mention that plays a large part in the books is Anne's nightmares. So the scenes that are showcased in the nightmares lend themselves to being warm toned and being dark. So I think having those warm and dark colors dominate the scenes that pertain to Anne's memories and lost past would be an interesting touch, as well as creating a sharp contrast between the way that Anne usually perceives the world versus the way that the nightmares portray it. I really enjoyed this book, and I would really once again encourage you to check it out, especially if you enjoy fantasy and fairy tales. My summary really doesn't do it justice. But if you did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and leave any books, movies or TV series that you want to see a stick to the script video on in the comments below, and all the relevant links will be in the description box if you want to check them out. Otherwise, I'll see you guys again next time. Bye!